Good morning, everybody. Lee Brower here, and welcome to this week's edition of Meaningful Monday. I am grateful to be here, and I am glad to be here. And I'm glad you're here. And I hope you're grateful to be here. You know, have you ever listened to a story, heard a story, read a story, and it stuck with you, and you kept thinking about it, and you thought you learned a lesson from it, and you think about it some more, and you learn more? Well, recently I listened to a speech given by David Brooks. And in that speech, he told a story about an Israeli daycare center that had a problem. Problem was too many of the parents kept coming late to pick up their children. Well, that's expensive because they got to pay for the teachers, they got to keep the doors open, etc. So they decided they'd impose a fine. Once they imposed the fine, guess what happened? No, they didn't start picking them up on time. The rate of parents picking up their children late doubled. Doubled. You see, that is because before, picking up your kid on time was a moral responsibility to the teacher so that they could go home. But once the fine was imposed, it was no longer a moral responsibility. It was an economic transaction. The moral lens had been taken away, and the economic lens had been put up. Our society does quite the job, don't they, in the course of our daily lives of taking off the moral lens and helping us see life through an economic lens, making us more morally dumb. Would you say that part of our responsibility to our family, to our children, to our employees, etc., is to make them morally strong, morally smart, or to take that away from them? So many times we impose way too many rules, way too many regulations that have penalties and are economic transactions, or there are rules are meant to be what? Rules are meant to be broken. How many rules have you broken in the last year? In the last week? How many laws have you broken in the last week? How many of you were driving a little bit too fast or coasted through that stop sign? Isn't that breaking a rule? Isn't that breaking a law? But I think that if the governor of your state came to you and said, you know, we're having a problem, we're having too many deaths on our highways, would you be willing to make an agreement with me? Shake my hand, look me in the eyes, and say that you'll do your best to set a pace, to set a standard for other drivers so that we have fewer deaths by obeying the speed limit, and you shook hands on it? You see, you're strengthening that moral responsibility. What about with our children? Our children, our teenagers, we get out and we say, you've got to be home by this time. And if you're not home on this time, then we're going to get this is going to happen. That's going to happen to you. Where's the moral strength that you're building in them, the ability to honor a commitment and honor agreements? What if we replaced most of our rules? Now, granted, strong rules and laws are meant to protect us. But what are those rules that you have in your family that perhaps you could look at it, or even in your work, and look at it and say, is this taking away their moral exercise, their moral strength to be able to think for themselves and to do it for the right reason? What if you made an agreement that you're going to be home at a certain time? And let's say they don't show up on time. What is your language at that point? You don't go into them and say, oh, you broke the agreement. You broke the law. You come in and say, you must feel terrible. You keep that problem right where it belongs. You must feel horrible to make an agreement and not be able to keep it. How can we help you in the future? And you may have an agreement that the consequences are this. And you must feel terrible to have to accept these consequences. How can we help you in the future? Now, there's another side to that coin, and that's this. When they get home on time, you jump up and honor them. You might say something to them like, thank you for being on time. You don't know how far that goes in building trust with your mom and dad. Now, I hope you think about this week. I hope you look at it in terms of my business, how I work at work, but especially in your family. What are those ways that you can help strengthen and put on the moral lens? So they're looking at life through the moral lens and not the economic or the punishment lens. I think that if we do that, if we get focused in on it and we really concentrate on it, we will be doing a better job to prepare those that surround us, those that we have influence over, to prepare them in such a way that they'll be stronger and that their moral lens will be fortified and be strengthened. Something to think about. Have a meaningful week. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.